me. But what was going on in my head was I was tired of this shit. I would think to myself, man, I just got out of this motherfucker. Why am I back here? It's Thunderdorm. As soon as you walk in that door, you're getting hit up. Hey, homie, where you from? You know what I'm saying? What you bang? Growing up, it was predominantly, white people and Mexican people in my town, and felt that I was, just someone that belonged in that type of life. Like I didn't see nothing else outside of it. He probably wasn't too far off the mark. It was probably best I was locked up. It pretty much saved my life. They just get the kicking on him, and the guy suffered head trauma and ended up passing away from that.
All right, everyone, what's up? 15 to Life here with apparently my big brother, because he's 30 to life. So we're going to get into this. My Uso Ron is on here. We're going to be going through how we met, his situation, what he's been through, and most importantly, just what it is to be out here and be free again, right? So, Ron, you grew up in Vacaville, right? One or two siblings. You got a younger sister, right? You were a shy kid. You loved camping, fishing, all that outdoor stuff, skateboarding. I could totally see you skateboarding, by the way. Pretty spoiled as a kid. And then growing up, coming up 5th, 6th grade, things started going the other direction, right? Started getting into trouble at school and everything. Got involved with gangs, right? And kind of the smoking and drinking situation. And then things just kind of went bad. I met you in prison. We were both lifers at the time. That's where the 15 and the 30 to life comes from, right? But why don't you just tell us a little bit about how this transition from being the good kid that was spoiled, loving outdoors, to the drinking and smoking and getting involved with gangs. So tell us a little bit about that.
Growing up in a small town like Vacaville, I think for me, as a youngster, I had trouble fitting in with a lot of people. Being Samoan, I wasn't really knowing about my background as far as my roots and where my people come from. My mom kind of wanted us to have a different type of life out here. So, the way she was raising me wasn't the Samoan way. And so growing up, it was predominantly, white people and Mexican people in my town and a very few Black families. So, of course, I'm going to gravitate to where I fit in the most, where I feel like the most comfortable. And so a lot of these kids that were moving to Vacaville, they were coming from areas like LA and the Bay Area and things like that because of the prison that was in our town. And, whether it was for job opportunities or just to be closer to people who were incarcerated. And a lot of these kids that came from those areas, they came with that, gang mentality and that street mentality. And I kind of just fit in with that group of people. And so, I was around 12 years old. I ended up, hanging out with them more and getting jumped into what I thought was a gang, When I look back at it now, it was just wannabe stuff. But as a youngster, I took it pretty serious, So that's pretty much how it happened, just hanging around. It's kind of my environment that really got me into it. I mean, I had a lot of other things that was going on in my life, but yeah, it was environment that led to the gang life and everything.
So you start getting involved with outside influences. You get involved with the gang life, and how does that lead you down this path? I mean, obviously gangs are bad, right? But at the same time, like what was it that you started getting into as far as on the crime side that started you down that path that got you eventually into prison? Or juvenile hall. I'm sorry, that's where it really started, right?
Right. Well, like you said, I was a shy kid, and I don't know. I felt like back in those days, I got picked on a lot, got bullied a lot, and I really didn't have a voice to speak up for myself back then when I was a kid. And like I said, I didn't really fit in place around the people, so I looked different, and I kind of acted different. So I got picked on a lot, but what happened was is one time I remember just standing there, it was at school, and I was surrounded by a bunch of kids, and I was being picked on, being bullied. Someone was just pretty much talking shit to me, and they were trying to antagonize him to fight me. But what was going on in my head was I was tired of this shit, and I kept telling myself in my head over and over, man, just sock this motherfucker in his mouth. And it took a lot of courage to finally do it. And, good thing he was doing mostly the shit talking. And I finally socked him in his mouth, and I saw that, he was shocked. And I realized that these guys that were picking on me and doing all this shit talking were just like me, they weren't really that tough, and when you hit them, they let you know what they're really about. And I think after that, I started solving all my problems in that way. And then, with the drinking and everything, of course, drinking just makes it more easier to be, more confident in yourself. So, yeah, people that knew me growing up, I solved most of my issues with my fists, just how it was. And that's what basically got me locked up most of the time is just fighting, being violent.
Right. So I know you went to juvenile hall. So how old were you the first time you quote unquote got locked up? You went to juvenile.
Yeah. So I was 12 years old when I got locked up in juvenile hall, and I basically got suspended or expelled from school for fighting, and the kid got hurt. And yeah, so I got locked up in juvenile hall. It wasn't for a long time. And I remember my first time in juvenile hall, I was, crying like a little baby and talking on the phone to my mom, telling her to come get me, and she was like, I can't come get you, you messed up. They got you now. Now I can't do nothing for you. So that was kind of when I learned that, what it's like to be on my own, if anything, you know what I'm saying? So I felt kind of grown after I got out of juvenile hall. I just kind of didn't change nothing. I just went back to thinking I was this tough guy, this tough kid at 12 years old. So that's where it all started.
So is part of what happened from way back then at 12 years old to when you actually landed as an adult in California State Prison, well, would you characterize that as it's kind of a growth process through that system of getting into fights, then actually getting incarcerated, and just the perpetual motion of what's the next thing, and it basically kept going until it became a life sentence?
Right. Yeah. And when I look back at it, that's what I feel like. I feel like I was just stuck in this cycle, and it was hard to get out of, because I would remember, because I went to juvenile hall a few times before I ended up going to CYA and prison and things like that. And I remember those few times I went to juvenile hall, I would wake up the next morning, and see the steel door and the steel toilet and everything. And I would think to myself, man, I just got out of this motherfucker. Why am I back here? How do I keep ending up here? And I kept asking myself that, and I really didn't know, just being a young person and with a young mentality, because I thought that what I was doing, the way I was living was how everybody was living. Because, the kids around me was living that way too. They were going in and out of juvenile hall. They were doing things like that, so I don't know. It just was one of those things where we were just caught up in that cycle. And like you said, yeah, it just kind of built up to everything from juvenile hall to CYA to finally a life sentence in prison. But, I remember just thinking when I was young that I had no future, except for just being locked up, because that's just how I felt. I felt that I was, just someone that belonged in that type of life. Like I didn't see nothing else outside of it. It's weird how to explain it because you're just caught up, that tunnel vision.
No,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
And yeah, so in that, right? Like you said, like going into juvie and then waking up and going like, what the hell? Why am I back here? Why do I keep putting myself? So, well, if you can, talk about what, if at all, um, what was offered to you to help you stay out. Like you went in and out. Like, so I'm assuming at some point they're like, "Hey, Ron, what's up? You're back, huh?" So what, if anything, did the state do or the system do to help you get to a normal state of life instead of keeping in that revolving door?
Yeah, well, personally, I think that the state just basically, once you're caught up in that cycle, it's set up for you to continue to be in that cycle and to go down that road. Once you start going through the system, it's just a matter of time before you get to prison. Really, there's nothing there for you, especially back then in the 90s. I got kicked out of school, out of regular school, and all they did was put me in another school, which they called a continuation school, which was full of kids who have already been in juvenile hall or on probation right now or something like that. People who are involved in gangs, drugs, whatever. And so, I stayed in that environment. But like that's pretty much how the system was. But there was always someone down the line, like a counselor or someone or a teacher, that would always try to reach out to me, and maybe just try to say like, "Hey man, you need to slow your roll, or you're going to end up in prison one day, or, you might end up dead before you're 18. I got told that by a counselor one time. He had told me, "Hey, the way you living and acting, you ain't going to see 18, and when he told me that, I had been shot at a few times. I've been in, fights. I was sitting there, like I've been through a lot of shit at that time. So he probably wasn't too far off the mark. It was probably best I was locked up. It pretty much saved my life.
Yeah,
So
definitely. And yeah, I hear you and I agree. Like the system is set up to make money, and you don't make money if you don't have money in the bank, and inmates are money in the bank, right? Um, so you mentioned going to CYA, California Youth Authority. So what was your first time going to CYA? What was that experience like?
yeah, so I finally, committed a crime that got me sent to YA with a 9-year sentence. And yeah, and when I got to CYA, it was different from anything I've experienced. It just, I guess you could just put it this way: it was like a prison for kids. You can imagine that there was barbed wires, metal door, electric doors, all that stuff, cells, things like that. But I was how old was I? I think I was like 16 at the time, and I got tried as an adult, and so they sent me there to YA. And pretty much, if the counselor felt, I was getting in a lot of trouble or whatever, they could send me to prison. They can, redo my sentence and send me to prison. But, so I was charged with like as an adult, but housed in CYA. And getting there, my first time there, like I said, it was like being in prison. You get there and they strip you out, just like showing up to prison. They strip you all out. Except there, they threw us in a shower and all this stuff. And, of course, the TB testing, you go through that whole process. And then you get your bedding and your clothes and then you go into your building. And that experience right there, man, that's something else, man. I haven't got to speak a lot about my Y experiences, but walking in, I was walking into dorm 2 and I was in NRCC in Sacramento. And I was walking into dorm 2, and dorm 1 and dorm 2 was the little kids, the youngsters. So, and the other dorms had older kids like 17-year-olds, 18, 19, things like that. But we were the youngsters. So in dorm 2, it's Thunder Dorm. As soon as you walk in that door, you're getting hit up. Hey, homie, where you from? You know what I'm saying? What you bang? What they call you? Where you from? You know, everybody's hitting you up as you walking through, and you might say something that that be their enemy. They're gonna rush you right there on the spot. So automatically when you get to YA, you're constantly fighting. That's just how it was for me there. That experience.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I think a lot of people don't get that. They see and hear a lot of stuff about adult prison, regular prison, but they don't understand that some of the people they look down upon that are in that, all the stuff they went through before they ever got to state prison, right? And yeah, I never did time in YA or anything, but I've talked to enough people that have, and yeah, I'm glad I haven't. But yeah, no. So you get out of YA. How long were you out of YA before you eventually caught your case and landed you with a life sentence?
7 months.
7 months.
Yeah. Seven
So
months.
so talk about 7 months of being free and then right back in with a possible never exit.
Well, it was actually 7 months after a couple of violations. I think I did like two violations. And then my last violation, I was out 7 months before I caught the case. Yeah.
So you did a couple violations. And just for everyone else, violations typically are anywhere from a month to they can go up to a year.
Year. Mm-hmm.
So it's usually your opportunity to get your head right and not go back, or yeah, you get caught up on something new. So
Mm-hmm.
7 months after your last violation, like I'm assuming the two violations, you probably had short periods of time between them. So what
Right.
happened that got you to 7 months and then basically it all went away?
Yeah. So I was out for 7 months and I just remember that I was working and then just money wasn't meeting right. And again, with my stupid way of thinking, my young way of thinking, I felt like, selling weed would be the best way to make money for me. So I stopped working. And when you do that, you pretty much just put a target on your back to be violated again. So, I just stopped checking in with my parole officer. And next thing I knew, I was just on the run again for violation. And I had figured that, for some reason, I stupidly thought that I could run until I was 25 and then get off, because that's how long they can pretty much hold you as far as parole goes with CYA. So I was thinking that. And then, so I'm on the run for a while, and then I'm hanging out, just hiding at different places. I'm hanging out at one of my friend's house, and we're drinking and we're just hanging out and listening to music, just doing our thing. And I think we had plans later to go hang out with some females and stuff like that. But what happened was is one of my friends left the house, and when he left, he ended up getting an altercation a little ways down the road with some people that were walking down the street too. And they get in an altercation. Someone else comes and tells me that our friend is down the street fighting. So we run down the street. I get down there, and I'm one of the first people to get down there. And I remember just getting down there, and I didn't see anybody. It was dark. And what happened next was some guy had came out of the bushes. And I know a lot of things that happened afterwards, but during what happened at this time, none of it made sense. So, but he had came out of the bushes, and he had asked me, like, what's going on? What's the problem? And we're exchanging words. I was saying pretty much the same thing. And like I said, I usually just go to blows, So we started fighting, and he went down, and the other guys that were in the party, they show up, and as he went down on the ground, they show up. They just get the kicking on him, and the guy suffered head trauma and ended up passing away from that. So, we ended up going to court, and we thought it was going to be like an involuntary manslaughter because it wasn't like on purpose or anything like that. There was no weapons, but the DA decided to push second degree murder on the whole thing, and he ended up getting the conviction. The jury came back and convicted us for second degree murder. And because I had a prior, for going to YA and things like that, they gave me 15 to life, but they doubled it up to 30. And so that's how I ended up with the 30 to life sentence.
Yeah. And I'm just going to call this out for the people listening and everything like that. That's just how quick and how fast things where you're thinking it's a fight and, you know, then you're potentially never coming home. Right.
Exactly.
So yeah, and it could happen to pretty much anyone.